Most men who feel irritable, emotionally flat, unmotivated, and quietly depressed after the age of 35 are told the same thing by everyone around them, that they are stressed, that they are getting older, that this is just what life feels like now. And because men are culturally trained from childhood to push through discomfort without asking why, most of them accept that explanation and keep suffering in silence for years. But the research tells a completely different story. A growing body of clinical evidence from Columbia University Medical Center, Harvard Medical School, and the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry is making something undeniable. Declining testosterone is one of the most underdiagnosed drivers of depression, anxiety, cognitive fog, and emotional withdrawal in men over 35. And the vast majority of those men have never had their hormone levels tested. Today on Mangevity, we are going through everything the research actually shows about testosterone and mental health, why the connection is so consistently missed, and what men who are suffering need to understand right now. To understand why testosterone decline hits mental health so hard, you first need to understand that testosterone is not simply a muscle and sex drive hormone. That is the cultural simplification that has caused this crisis to go under-recognized for decades. Testosterone is a neurosteroid, meaning it directly crosses the blood-brain barrier and modulates the function of the central nervous system in ways that are essential for emotional regulation, cognitive clarity, motivational drive, and the basic experience of feeling engaged with life. Research published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that testosterone directly influences serotonin and dopamine receptor expression in the brain, two of the primary neurotransmitter systems that regulate mood, reward, pleasure, and the motivation to pursue goals. When testosterone declines, serotonin signaling weakens, dopamine sensitivity reduces, and the result is not simply low libido or reduced gym performance. The result is a man who feels emotionally blunted, inexplicably sad, unable to derive pleasure from things he used to enjoy, and increasingly withdrawn from the people and activities that once defined his identity. The clinical term for this constellation of symptoms is anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure, and it is one of the core diagnostic features of major depressive disorder. Research from Columbia University Medical Center documented that men with clinically low testosterone were more than twice as likely to meet diagnostic criteria for depression compared to age-matched men with normal testosterone levels. The daily life impact of this connection is profound and far-reaching. It shows up in marriages where a man has become emotionally unavailable and neither he nor his partner understands why. It shows up in careers where a previously ambitious, driven professional finds himself going through the motions without any sense of purpose or engagement. It shows up in friendships that quietly dissolve because a man stops initiating contact and stops showing up, not because he no longer cares, but because the neurological drive to connect, which testosterone actively supports, has quietly diminished. It shows up as a father who is physically present at his children's activities, but emotionally absent, struggling to access the warmth and enthusiasm he knows he should feel. And critically, it shows up as irritability and anger that men often mistake for character flaws rather than hormonal symptoms, snapping at family members over small frustrations, feeling disproportionately reactive to minor stressors, experiencing a hair-trigger emotional response that is entirely inconsistent with who they have always understood themselves to be. Research from Harvard Medical School confirmed that irritability and anger dysregulation are among the most common and most consistently misattributed symptoms of testosterone deficiency in men, consistently treated as psychological problems or personality issues when their origin is physiological. This misattribution has a cost. Men who are treated for depression with antidepressants when the underlying driver is testosterone deficiency often show partial or no response to medication because antidepressants do not address the hormonal mechanism producing the symptoms. The picture becomes significantly more alarming when you add the andropause dimension. And this is where the research genuinely does shock most men who encounter it for the first time. Andropause, sometimes called male menopause, is the gradual hormonal transition that men undergo as testosterone production declines with age. Unlike female menopause, which occurs over a relatively compressed time frame, andropause unfolds slowly over years and decades, typically beginning with a testosterone decline of 1 to 2% per year after the age of 30, accelerating in the late 30s and 40s, and producing its most significant mental and emotional symptoms in men between 40 and 55 who have no idea that what they are experiencing has a name, a biological mechanism, and a clinically addressable cause. Here is the finding that most men find genuinely shocking. Research published in JAMA Psychiatry found that the relationship between testosterone and depression is bidirectional and self-reinforcing. Low testosterone causes depression, and depression, through its well-documented effect on the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis, further suppresses testosterone production. The two conditions drive each other in a downward spiral that, without intervention, becomes progressively harder to reverse the longer it continues. This means that the man who has been quietly depressed for 3 years and has never had his testosterone tested may not simply have low testosterone causing depression. He may have had moderately declining testosterone that triggered mild depression, which then drove his testosterone lower, which deepened his depression, which suppressed his testosterone further. The spiral continues while the man continues to be told he is stressed and needs to manage better. The societal cost of this misdiagnosis is staggering. Men have a suicide rate approximately 3 to 4 times higher than women in the United States, and men between the ages of 45 and 65 represent the highest risk demographic for suicide of any group in the country. Researchers studying male depression have noted that the andropause window, 40 to 55, overlaps almost exactly with the period of peak male suicide risk. The research does not claim that testosterone deficiency causes suicide, but it does establish clearly and consistently that untreated hormonal decline is a significant and treatable contributor to the depression, hopelessness, and emotional despair that are the clinical precursors to suicidal ideation in men, and that identifying and addressing that hormonal contributor could change outcomes for a population that is currently dying at rates that demand urgent attention. Here is where the suspense in this conversation reaches its most important point. The man who most needs this information is the least likely to have sought it out. He does not think of himself as someone with a mental health problem. He thinks of himself as someone who is tired, stressed, aging, and quietly failing at things that used to come easily. He is not wrong about the failing. He is wrong about the cause. The solution begins with a single and non-negotiable first step: testing. Before any intervention, lifestyle change, or clinical treatment can be meaningfully evaluated, a man over 35 who is experiencing the symptoms described in this video needs to know where his testosterone actually is. The standard of care, as outlined by the American Urological Association and the Endocrine Society, is to test total testosterone, free testosterone, SHBG, LH, FSH, and estradiol twice on separate mornings between 7 and 10 in the morning, because testosterone levels follow a circadian rhythm and single measurements can be misleading. This baseline is not optional. It is the foundation of everything that follows, because without it, A man is making decisions about his mental health without knowing one of the most clinically significant variables in the equation. If testing reveals clinically low testosterone, defined as total testosterone below 300 nanograms per deciliter, combined with symptomatic presentation, the conversation about intervention begins. That conversation should happen with a physician who is specifically trained in men's hormonal health, not a general practitioner who will look at a number in the broad normal range and tell a symptomatic man that his levels are fine. The range is wide, and where a man falls within it relative to his own baseline matters more than where he falls relative to a population average. Beyond testosterone-specific intervention, the lifestyle interventions with the strongest documented impact on both testosterone and mental health are resistance training, sleep optimization, and stress management, and the research on each of these is not subtle. A 2021 meta-analysis in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research confirmed that compound resistance training 3 to 5 times per week produces significant sustained increases in total testosterone in men over 35. Sleep research from the University of Chicago demonstrated that men who slept less than 5 hours per night showed a 25% reduction in testosterone compared to well-rested counterparts, a hormonal hit equivalent to aging 10 to 15 years in a single week of poor sleep. And a research review from the Journal of Psychiatric Research found that structured mindfulness-based stress reduction programs produced clinically significant improvements in both depression scores and testosterone levels in men with documented anxiety and hormonal decline. The compounding effect of addressing all three simultaneously, training, sleep, and stress, creates a hormonal and neurological environment that clinical treatment can then optimize rather than fighting against. The man who emerges from this process is not simply a man with better lab numbers. He is a man who recognizes himself again, in his relationships, in his work, in his capacity for joy, patience, and connection. That recognition is what the research promises and what men who go through this process consistently report. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.